And it's formed by the list of constituent organizations, ACEC, the Canadian Construction Association, Construction Specifications Canada, and the RAIC. And it's governed by a steering committee. And there's various voting members from all over industry, from those representative groups plus a few owners. There's a bit of a matrix. And 4 from public owners, 2 from private sector owners. And the National Research Council is our technology advisor and partner. And we currently have 3 subcommittees, Technical Advisory Committee, Contract Languages Committee, and a Communications Committee. And I think there's one missing. And in the last 2 years, there hasn't been a lot of, I think that's been one of the questions is what are we doing? Because you don't see an awful lot of IBC written over the internet or anywhere. So that's something we are working on. We're just basically trying to set our direction properly and understand, where we have to go and move forward. Some of the current initiatives we have is to develop contract language. We're certainly working on that right now and hoping to have language ready in form of contract addendums and standalone contracts. I'm not too sure the date for this to happen, but I've been kind of reassured it'll be either late 2012 or early 2013. We established the Canadian chapter of BuildingSMART International, now known as BuildingSMART Canada. And I'm going to ask Susan to talk about this a little bit in a minute. Basically, we did this to actually go the way of open BIM and get to that higher level of the current status of BIM in Canada, and trying to figure out, there's Revit on the marketplace. The processes aren't really changing. There's things we have to do to become, more into the open realm of BIM or to achieve what BIM really is. We have to work either at the stakeholder level, actually doing the doing, or work at developing the standards longer term. And so we want to work with international agencies and other governments to actually, develop the proper standards and then have them ready for Canadian use and consumption. And that's where we're going. That's why we actually went forward with that Canadian chapter. Many Canadian practitioners, and I believe, Alan, you've been heavily involved with the BuildingSMART Alliance. We have been, I know Susan as well has worked with the BuildingSMART Alliance. I know CanBIM also had connections with the BuildingSMART Alliance working on the MBIMS project. We thought that's an excellent initiative, but there is distinct differences between Canada and the US in terms of business. And we thought it was best if we went the route of creating that chapter so we can actually leverage, there's a lot of brain power in Canada and a lot of innovation in Canada. We should leverage that. So that's why we went that route to create that chapter. Do you want to talk about this? No? Susan's going to leave me dangling. I was hoping she'd talk about this. Just the role of the Canadian chapter is basically to align, the standards in Canada and to work with, other key partners and to prop up the National Building Information Modeling Standard for Canada and contribute towards the creation of the International Building Information Modeling Standard. I know CanBIM is integral in the voting and the balloting for I think it was MBIMS 2, which was recently released. We want to take it that next step, and we want to take it, take the MBIMS 2 US and actually develop the MBIMS Canada from that, and then have that the core of our standard. It'll be the international standard. So just a bit of the role of our Canadian chapter. It's for first and foremost, it's for all things open BIM. It's to review and adapt, endorse MBIMS 2.0. We are seriously looking at the French language translation as one of the things that we can do. It's a bit of an issue. We are going to partner up with, there's a French chapter. They are going to work with us on this, but there is an obvious difference between, French in France and French in Canada. We're looking at the metric system and technical issues and process issues. So there's a lot that we have to first and foremost go and review and analyze to see what those differences are, then work towards MBIMS 3 or MBIMS Canada. And we are certainly expecting input from CanBIM. In terms of participating internationally, we send delegates to the BuildingSMART international meetings. We support BuildingSMART international initiatives. We host international BSI meetings. There will be one hosted here in Canada about a year from now, and there will be an international event associated with that. And then again, about a year after that, we'll be hosting a full technical meeting as well. And we also want to provide input to future versions of the IBIMs or NBIMs. And we will have a website. It's kind of under construction right now, but the URL is there, and I can provide that if anybody's interested. Please hold off a few days before going to it. This is a bit of a background. We are at the BuildingSMART International meetings were held. They're held every 6 months. There's an international user group and an international technical management committee, and they hold their meetings 6 months. They rotate between basically by continent. We have key individuals that participate. Susan is our business manager. I'm the technical coordinator. Alan Taramera from RAIC is the user group lead, and we also have participation on the BuildingSMART Data Dictionary, which is David Watson from Alberta. Seems to be a lot of good things happening in Alberta. This is just a synopsis of the report and what we're all about. And like I say, the mandate is to be, the mission is to be authoritative source of open BIM in Canada, voice for BIM. Just an overview of some of the key activities we have planned or objectives. I think I've kind of run through these, and it's a bit of a rehash. Our key planned activities are 212, and heading into 213 is a review of the NBIMS 2.0 with a view to provide the Canadian side of it. We want to finalize our contract language. We're working on a BIM practice manual at a high level, and that should be published within estimated TA for that practice manual.
It's split up into volumes.
So we're
First 2 volumes should be out.
The first 2 volumes should be out this year, so look for it. We're trying to raise the profile of BuildingSMART Canada. We're also working to develop a roadmap, and we'd like to include CanBIM in that equation. And we're also looking to organize workshops. And there's an IPD, there's an integrated project delivery workshop in Toronto, November 8th, I believe. So this is a recent announcement. We have signed an MOU with the BuildingSMART Alliance in regards of working collaboratively on the IBIMs and the NBIMs. And this is to make CanBIM, we have the license to actually create NBIMS Canada. So basically, this is where I'd like some interaction. A lot of blank stares looking up at me here. So what BIM is now, I guess that's kind of something that we've been struggling with. And I had my eyes opened last week going to the BuildingSMART International meetings to find out that what we're doing today is kind of like is anybody in the room familiar with what's going on in the UK, the BIM task force? Yes? Basically, we're looking to develop that, take us from where we are today, where we have a lot of effort going on, using the applications and the processes that are in place, doing, kind of a federated or distributed approach to BIM, using the tools we can, to take it to that next level where it's fully coordinated, fully collaborative BIM. And BIM today, in my eyes, is Revit in the marketplace with a lot of other tools, and there's not a lot of interoperability. There's an open standard, which is the IFC, which is not quite mature. There's a coordination view. It's good for some things, but it's not that full. It doesn't really give you the oomph to do that open BIM, that promise what it is really going to be. And so the challenge is for us to sort of recognize what's going on at the stakeholder level, the actual practitioners, the challenges going on, and still keep in mind that in a couple years we're working towards an IFC format, which is going to be, there's a lot more to it. It's a more truly interoperable BIM, and working with these open standards and getting to a level where we need to be. And the challenge is actually for us is actually figuring out how to get from where we are now to where we're going to be. And and then defining for us what BIM will actually be. And I think we have a couple key groups here in Canada, and I think it's important that we work together to sort of move the ball forward. We have other governments doing a lot, and I think it's about time Canada actually reacts and does something. And I think that's kind of a challenge that we have. And I think it's important to sort of, still keep our pulse on what's going on in the industry here, but aim for that next level of BIM. And I was really energized by what the UK is doing, and they have a major construction program. They've recognized that they can be 30% more efficient across the board. So they got to change all their processes. They got to change how they actually work in the industry. Oops. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Back? Okay. So it's just, there's a lot of promise, and there is governance. In the UK, it's actually a cabinet mandated. I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but it's actually mandated by cabinet. They have to do BIM. It's coming forward. There's a plan to get there. There's three stages to it. I don't know if everybody's familiar. I don't have the curve, the diagram, but it's not our diagram to share anyways. It's the UK's. I think it's time we take the lead or leverage what they're doing. The same thing in Australia. Australia's got a pretty aggressive program where they're looking at moving the ball forward and actually having the government mandate it. And I don't know if we want to have, if we have that possibility to do that in Canada. Actually, if the government says you have to do it, then it is a mandate, then maybe we need that. So it's something to consider, or maybe if they do that, then they can provide the funding for us to actually move these standards forward and, and change industry. So these are just some key things we're considering. The UK government is actually looking to Canada for support. They want to know they're not the only one in the world actually moving forward with an aggressive program. I know Australia is kind of looking at the same thing. They want to support the UK, and where's Canada in this whole equation? So, anyways, I'll move on to that. So, what we need to do, I'm just going to wrap it up there. I just wanted to provide everybody with a quick update of what we are and what we're doing, and where we're going kind of as a unit. I hope I gave you enough. I didn't give a whole lot, but we are working towards developing that mandate. We want to go after the Government of Canada BIM task force that can maybe make that real impression in the industry to make change happen. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap it up there.
I do know something about governance, and I can make a suggestion if I might. It wasn't entirely clear to me why or how you might be different than CanBIM, and indeed you might not be different. I think that in industries that are emerging, or technologies that are emerging that want to have an influence in its community, a single voice is always better than more than one voice, especially if that single voice has a wide representation from the membership. That is, the membership is a national representative or fully representative of the industry. If you're trying to get the same members as CanBIM and they are trying to get the same members as you, and ultimately you're doing the same things, coming to speak at one of their events may not be enough. Maybe you should actually think about what you would do as a united organization.
That just the one point on to add to start with that. We aren't an open membership-driven organization yet, and that's where CanBIM. That's why we're here. CanBIM is membership-driven and accountable to members, whereas the entity that we're here on behalf of is association, and it was built by various organizations together, working towards a common, to create a structure. And we are looking to engage. We understand that's an area, the user stakeholder level is an area that we need to have broader engagement. So that's totally where we have to go, but we have to get things aligned first. We can't go all over the place trying to, develop certain technologies. We have to do it collaboratively. So, anything to add on that?
Well, I think you're right with the goals. The goals are definitely the same. Working towards the same goals on the same page is what our two groups have been in discussion about. That's an ongoing discussion no matter how many groups or single voice organizations there are. It's a constant discussion of how can we all work together towards the same end goal. The difference in structure is CanBIM represents practitioners, the practitioner level. They have a lot of talent in the board and in the membership on the end user experience, needs, requirements. The IBC is working at an organization and association level. So two different ways of almost a pincer effect to achieve getting Canada on the same page and therefore achieving that single voice. We're hoping with BuildingSMART Canada, we're providing the right arena that we can have that connection point and communicate clearly to industry how we are working alongside each other to each other's strengths towards that end goal. As we all know, BIM, what we envision it to be, what it's predicted to be, this seamless flow of data and interoperability, there are a lot of moving parts. It's not for one person to do. It's for all of us to work together towards. And I think between our two groups and now with BuildingSMART Canada in the international arena with other Commonwealth countries and our neighbor, the US, and others, we're working on this in the right direction. Our next stage is to solicit more public involvement. CanBIM has a different structure in how they involve people than we do, but it doesn't mean that they're at odds with each other.
I wasn't suggesting at all that they were at odds, and it sounds like you're both driving in the same direction, which is all the more reason why you should maybe collaborate even more closely than it sounds like you are.
We'd love to.
Yeah.
We're trying.
That's why
the
we're here.
associations that you represent, the members of those associations are exactly the same people who are the direct participants in CanBIM. So, you know, as the associations sign on to your group, and the associations, the same ones, I can tell you, are going to sign on to CanBIM, it's going to become increasingly blurry why you're doing it in the way you are. So I'll leave it at that.
You're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. This is what we're dealing with. Again, we have multiple levels that, as a country, we need to deliver on. We need to align with the international level. We need to be clear on our national level framework. From there, we get down to the regional and company and then project-specific levels. There is no reason why we need to or are actually working at odds or in competition.
CanBIM has technical committees trying to develop standards for utilizing BIM in the project delivery.
Yeah.
And according to the slides I saw, you guys are developing similar technical standards as well?
Yeah, we're both involved in the technical side, and it's different levels. It's we're looking at the open standards and developing where they're going to be.
Okay, but
in terms
there's
of
an advantage that you guys have in that I see, you know, you've got CSA, Defense Construction Canada. There's a couple of pretty heavy hitters you've got in there that the standards you develop potentially could be adopted into building codes or language of contracts, like P3 projects, for example, or any of the Defense Construction Canada projects as well. Whereas the technical guidelines that the industry, and I see this as basically where the two separate, is the industry develops our own technical standards, and you guys would either adopt those technical standards that, you know, you can set the bar here, but if we're only able to deliver down here, then there is a discrepancy in there. So, I mean, I see our office, the Mitchell Partnership, as a Revit MEP provider of BIM. I think we do a pretty good job delivering it, but we're not up here yet. And you know, if you guys are setting the bar up here, really you're only opening the door for foreign competition to come in and take those projects away from us.
I think if we don't react, they're going to come in. And how do we connect on the stakeholder, the doer level? When, you know, I think there is a definite gap there, and we do have to develop the how-to guides and how do you actually do your business. But it's not the individual silos that we have challenges on. It's actually the overall process. The overall process has to change. And you can't have process change if you each go at it from their own little silos. That's how it's been going on for the last 100 and some years. We need to change that, and that's what other governments are doing. The UK and Australia and the US, they're all trying to make that change. And if they do make that change and they work together on an open platform, you know the market is global. The firms are going to be here in Canada doing our business for us. So I think we better be there before they are. So I think we have to connect that user level to that technology level.
I understand that IBC is new, and they are growing, and they're looking for their direction within. And as they are communicating with CanBIM as that collaborative 360 effort. Not to turn this into a why are you, what are you type of scenario. Those are the questions you knew that you would get when you agreed to come here. But I really don't want, as the outgoing president, nor would I want as the president, to pick apart this initiative. It is confusing. We knew that when we sat together in our meetings. The clarity will come through collaboration. The definition of their roles will be defined. We are defined because we're older. We have been doing this for a lot longer. Don't discredit the initiative of IBC. We've invited them as a friendly comrade, not Dan's definition of collaboration, whoever Dan is. So all I can say from here on in is time will tell, time will develop, time will separate, time will determine where we're going, both as CanBIM and both as IBC. So, you know, we have a very open communication going on with IBC, very, very open. The decisions are going as fast as they can make them and as fast as we can make them. We do have a little more freedom because we are user-driven, and that doesn't discredit the procedures in place that IBC has. They do represent government, they do represent a bigger body, and decision-making isn't as quick. But, you know, don't discredit the fact that they are being made. So I just wanted to step in and add whatever value that was. So, you know, with that in mind, again, we're happy that you came, John.
Thanks, appreciate it. One after another.
I just had a question. I know you mentioned about developing contracts or maybe contract addendums.
Yeah.
What's the plan, and how's the interaction going to work with CCDC Council?
It is CCDC we're involved with.
So are they participating? Like, are you guys going to develop something and run it through them, or are they participating on the IBC
They're
directly?
participating. Some of the members on CCDC
They're
are on IBC
both.
steering committee.
Okay, so there's a crossover
Yeah.
there. Because we have, you know, the general contractors subcommittee. We'd love to participate in those discussions.
We need that participation.
Yeah, because we're going to inherit that work probably one day.
That was one of the key questions we had. We actually had our TAC sit in on the last contract language session we had, and we recognize there's issues. Like, we have to hit a broader audience. We have to vet what we're doing. We have to understand the contractor's perspective, and frankly, we don't quite have enough of that within IBC. And I think we have to broaden our scope a little bit. We need that user perspective more. We need that stakeholder level, and in my opinion, it's a bit of a gap that we're trying to fix. And you know, part of it is being here today to discuss that. I'm also really curious as to, you know, what's going on in the UK. They have multi-party contracts and IPD on the plate. They're looking at it. They're looking at developing the language there. So, you know, in Australia, the same thing. And was agreed at our last session that, you know, it is a multi-party agreement that we have to really leverage, and that's what we have to develop. We can put addendums into current CCDC contracts. It could be quite useless, in my opinion, but, you know, that's just my opinion. Who am I?
But one thing we notice, the contracting world is perhaps the slowest part of the equation. So one of the difficulties is seeing what needs to happen and realizing the time frame it's going to take makes you want to go home and cry. I mean, on the one hand, it is what it is. On the other hand, I mean, there has to be some kind of innovative solution to this, or creative solution to get past that time lag, or in a way, dealing with the dinosaurs.
So the slowness is in the development of the contract language.
Well, for example, the first BIM addendum that's being developed is specifically for typical design bid build contracts.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows anything about BIM
It doesn't work
says
What's the point?
it's
Yeah.
useless.
difficult. Okay.
But to get to a multi-party level contract or even an IPD contract from a government context, that's a big, big gray area right now. There's a lot more people that aren't used to talking that we have to get to talk. So although there's the technical standards on the one side, we now have to recognize that technical standards need to meet with contract, which needs to meet with the end user requirements. None of them can be thought about in isolation. And so it's almost a psychology exercise just to get people to talk.
Okay, cool, thanks.
In terms of the pace of change, it's one of those. Like, I was all excited last week when we were at the BSI meetings about hearing that IFC4, it's now an ISO standard, 16739. It'll be published hopefully in December, but that is the next generation of IFC. That all the data's in there. To me, that's a really big win for us moving forward. But when you stop and think about when will that be available in application and actually current in development, we're probably looking at 2 years plus. So it's like, yeah, great, but still, we still got to do our business today and wait for these things to mature. So it's kind of hurry up and wait kind of exercise. So in terms of the contracts and all of that, I think the more people we can educate on the value of these multi-party and the value of BIM and projects, the better. And if we actually ever can get a mandate at a high level, I think it's that's the way to go. So, any other questions or crickets?
Does that help to clarify at all the non-competing interest?
No.
No?
I guess the question can be turned around back to CanBIM. How can we work together?
Well, first, John, thank you very much for being here today. I think we know that there is distinct uniqueness and distinct differences, and the differences are not differences in a negative connotation. They're actually differences in approaches, and I think that what Susan's just mentioned, I was sitting there thinking, if I had to tackle having to deal with the movement of molasses, I'd probably be a hell of a lot less patient than she is. So I commend you that you've taken on this area that is a challenge. And CanBIM has always said, we're for our members, and we've always been happy that IBC has taken on the challenge of dealing with the associations and to deal with things associated with a regulatory framework that really is not the purvey of CanBIM and never was. So that vacuum you've filled really well. I think we'll all arrive at the same point. I honestly do. And I think that the opportunities we have ahead of us lie in the framework of BuildingSMART Canada, not necessarily in IBC. Because if you look at the charter and the requirements of BuildingSMART International, and you look at what's on the CanBIM website, they're not that much different. So I think as the move forward, there has to be, I think, a very honest series of discussions that are going to take place and have been taking place. And it's not about competition at all. In fact, we're very encouraged to know that you've taken on areas of CCDC, that you're out there at the BuildingSMART International level and you're feeding that back through. Where we excel is that we are in the trenches. We're using this tool day in, day out. We are struggling with its uptake. We are fighting in the trenches. We know how this thing works. So I think in response back for IBC and BuildingSMART Canada to CanBIM is to realize the immense value of that. And you'll see some of the presentations this afternoon, I hope, and including your own, that speak to those things. I think it's very, very important that we see that in those two contexts. We're the guys who get our feet dirty. We're the guys who are in there day in, day out. And I think that's an important aspect. The other point is that as we move forward, we do not see our role as being cellular or in any way being alone in this milieu. We realize that there are immense impacts coming from us trans-border, internally, externally, and international, and we're aware of that. And I think that in reaching out to IBC, BuildingSMART Canada today to give us this update is that first step towards keeping the dialogue open. If you're not communicating, you're going to have a problem. And I believe that the communication is there. We just need to keep moving the dialogue forward. And we will settle out on what each of us will do will be to the benefit of everybody in Canada. And if it's two organizations, fine. If it's one, that's fine too. But we have to move forward in a way that we're always thinking about the interests of our people. In your case, your association members, of which I'm one, I pay my RAIC dues every year. And likewise for CanBIM, our members who are expecting us to act in a way in their best interest. So I hope that helps address it and set the tone, but we're here willing, ready, and able. Excellent. Glad to hear that. Yeah, I do acknowledge that, Alan, and thanks for those comments. Those are really good. Totally acknowledge in discussions we've had, kind of, you know, John, Sue, and I offline. You know, when you have two groups that are distinct, and there's personalities on both sides of the fence, we have to find a way to connect. Like, the biggest challenge I see personally is, well, actually there's two of them, is resources. There's limited resources. We are challenged by that. And I think we have to make corrections to make sure we leverage our resources to the fullest. I fully respect that this is membership driven, and that, you know, on the IBC side it's very similar, but it's just a couple of organizations paying a higher contribution, and those resources got to be leveraged like to the max. And if, you know, to eliminate any kind of duplications in that area, you know, we have to really pay attention to that. And we really want to open the doors on the BuildingSMART Canada side to, you know, trying to mimic the structure of other organizations that are doing this internationally, and sort of get contributions. Kind of, you know, it's almost a membership-driven area. So I think we have to pay attention to that and see how we can work together. And I totally agree with you on the user stakeholder, the actual doers. They're in this room. They are CanBIM members. And we need that as part of where we're going with the IBCs. More on, you know, you mentioned it very eloquently. They're very much on the high level, get the contracts, get those organizational level stuff done. BuildingSMART Canada, we want to, you know, we want to work together with you. So let's keep that dialogue going. So thanks for the comments.
Yeah, the only way open standards will ever work or ever be useful is making that connection with the end user. It has to be usable. Can't just be a pie in the sky.
Yeah. On that note, we've got another question? No? Good. I'm going to wrap it up there. Then thanks for the time this afternoon. I appreciate the invitation to speak here, and thank you very much.